to the Pulse Collective podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the PCP, otherwise known as the Pulse Collective podcast. As always, I'm your host, Shahrukh Ansari. The PCP, for all of you that are new to watching the show, we actually sit down with top business leaders, entrepreneurs, and executives across every space, and we learn about their secrets when it comes to sales, marketing, operations, and just the state of the market as a whole. If this is your first time watching, we are Pulse Marketing Collective. We sit down and partner with businesses all across the entire world to help them scale their operations, bring new clients, and actually support their overall customer retention as well. So if you've been in the space for a while, tried cold calling people and it's not working, or just tried the same old formulas that haven't worked out, drop us a message down below and our team of trusted consultants will have the ability to reach out to you, and we'll see if we can have something that can potentially be a good fit for us to work together. But now, putting all that out of the way, I'm very, very excited because today I'm actually joined by Barbara Steinberg, who is the founder of eFraud Services. It's a company that's focused on helping investigators, forensic accountants, and law enforcement actually analyze financial data by extracting and structuring information from complex bank statements and financial records as well. Barbara, I'm very, very excited to have you on, and I know that's a very holistic definition of what you guys do. So I'd love to hear a little bit more, but I want to start off by thanking you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Shahrukh. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, Barbara.
Thank you.
Can you just kick us off? I guess we'll start off by just sharing a bit about your background and also what eFraud Services is all about.
Sure. I've been in this in the IT industry or computer industry, whatever we call it today, technology for more than most of your viewers have been alive. So I'll start with that. I've seen a lot of transitions, a lot of changes. My background, I started out as a programmer, and I managed systems. I put in some pretty substantial systems in some companies that you would recognize. I started out in medical applications, healthcare, somehow segued into manufacturing applications. And then I got into consulting, which led me into sales. So I've run the whole gamut. I've had my own business before in IT as well as other services. Back in 1990, I decided there was nothing interesting happening in the computer industry, so I went into financial services. So I became a CFP. I had an education business, et cetera, et cetera. Come your internet, and so I got back in .com era. I got back into software sales at that time, and obviously things have changed since then. I then had a business called Elder Care Financial Solutions in the mid 2000s, 2014 or so. Helping elderly first with veterans benefits to help with long-term care like assisted living, nursing home, home care that most people were not aware of at the time, and as well as widows of veterans. And that segued into Medicaid applications, which is how I got where I am today. Medicaid is for older people who need nursing home or they're indigent, they don't have any money. So we help with the application. Part of the application process is they look for 5 years of bank statements. They're going to examine them in detail to see if you or your family gave away money in anticipation of having the government pay for your care. So they examine it in a lot of detail. So we were doing that, and I saw that we were taking paper bank statements and we were typing them to Excel. So being an IT person, I said, must be a way to automate this. Found a company in Scotland, and they had software to do it. Their market happened to be financial fraud detection, but it's the same application. They have to look at, usually 5 years of bank statements and things like that. So I, at that time, moved to Florida, became their U.S. reseller. So I had a lot of experience. I've had federal government customers, state government customers, my local sheriff, forensic accountants, like you said before, whole vast number of different people's attorneys, things like that. Fraud is obviously a very huge problem. So anyway, about 5-6 years ago, that software became not so easy to sell because it was semi-manual. The reason it worked, and I'll digress a little bit, the technical problem, which most people don't realize, is in this country, we still have about 4,000 different banks. But 10 years ago, we probably had 10,000 banks. They all have a different format. Nothing is standardized. I can show you 40 formats, from Bank of America. So the problem for the software is every time you see it, it's a different one. The analogy that I use is that, and we started using machine learning and just couldn't get the accuracy that we needed. For the reason that if I give it 200 invoices and I give it 201, it says, yeah, I recognize that it's an invoice. Here are the keywords. Here's the data. I give it 200 bank statements and give it 201. It says, I don't have a clue. I've never seen that before. So it became a huge challenge to get it and to get it accurately, because when these people they go to court and they testify to that the data they're presenting is 100% accurate. So that was an important thing. So I've been on a journey for like 5, 6 years through the technology until about a year ago. Someone said, never going to work like that. You need to use Gen AI. He said 2 weeks ago you couldn't do this, but now you can do this. So for the last year plus, I've been using Gen AI, and it's actually incredible, and it becomes more incredible every day. But from the beginning, I was able to accurately extract the bank transactions from any statement and do it in minutes, as well as, with near 100% accuracy. The only reason we lose accuracy now is somebody misscanned the page, which is another technical challenge because these bank statements are not online. You can't go to your bank and download 5 years of bank statements. So what we're doing is we're dealing with scans of PDF scans of documents, paper documents. So number one, they're not straight. Number two, they have coffee stains, balance your checkbook notes, things like that. So it's not just taking data, analyzing the data, it's extracting the data accurately, quickly. So that leads me to where we are today. We have eFraud Investigator, which is our premier product. We continue to enhance it with reports and analysis. And it's browser based on my experience dealing with different people and things like that. You don't install it anywhere, and anybody can use it at any time. Some of these organizations, 3 people need it at once. Other times, one person needs it, so you don't have to buy 3 licenses. It's pay as you go. So it's just based on usage. Sometimes they have a big case, sometimes they don't have a case. And like I said before, it's accurate and it's fast. So we're very proud of it. We're rolling it to the market now, and it's pretty exciting.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I love your journey, how for a lot, like you mentioned, a lot of our audience is going to also include younger entrepreneurs, people that are earlier on in their career journeys as well. And it just goes to show that, you've been in basically every scope of business that there is. And now you're doing something where you're heading you're heading the sales operations now as well over at eFraud. So
I became the sales and the technology unwittingly, which is another story, which I'll go into if you want to. But we had
yeah,
that was our biggest problem. And our challenge was getting the technology straight and having other people just not perform. That very disappointed.
yeah.
What goes on today in software development?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I have my own fair share of experiences in my couple years, not as much as you, but my few years when I was at IBM. I've seen a lot of things when it comes to software dev, and especially on the sales side as well. Work directly with the dev team on certain deals, and it's. I think I know exactly what you're getting into, and we'll have some time to get into that as well. But I'm really curious, just overall looking at your platform, and you kind of touched on it briefly when you were talking about the different customer segments that you're helping. But in these companies, who would you say, when you mentioned they're like one company might have 5 users, but you're selling one license to that company, who are the primary users of your platform that you would say at every single company? What are those people? What do their jobs look like?
Sure. Just to clarify, we're not selling them one license. It's purely usage based. So
Got it.
that was
Okay.
the old software. They could only afford one license, and then 3 people needed it at once. So it was a thing. So anyway, so one of the things we address is that anybody can use it anytime, and you're just paying for what you use as a pay as you go type thing. So we've addressed that because we have small people, we have big people. Obviously in the government agency, there's the Office of the Inspector General. Every federal agency has that. In the states, the Attorney General's offices, and they have all these departments within them. I've worked a lot with Medicaid fraud control units. Every state has one of those, plus some territories. You get down locally, sheriffs, police departments, and within those local organizations, there's usually a financial crimes unit or an economic crimes unit. So these people are specifically investigating this. And then obviously forensic accountants, this is their bread and butter. And as well as attorneys, white collar attorneys,
Right. And how are you currently like getting in front of these types of people? Because they're very like I would imagine they're not just readily giving, like they're not just gonna, like you can't just find them on like social media or anything. So how are you actually getting yourself in front of these types of people?
It's interesting, having been around the industry a long time. And again, I was selling other software. We've been to conferences. There's a huge organization called the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners with 94,000 members globally. So we've exhibited at their conferences. I mean, we know the people. We know the people from the FBI. We know the IRS. The federal government only uses 25-year-old software, and they want new ones.
Right.
So, so we see a lot of people there, they see our demos, they love our stuff. So we have lots and lots of content. We've been dealing like in Florida with the sheriffs and, the other organizations and stuff, over the years. So we know a lot of people. And in terms of the other things, there's so many organizations that people belong to, whether it's the CPAs or divisions within that. Finding prospects is not our problem. I am a heavy user of LinkedIn, which we'll get to, and I know we've talked about that, and Sales Navigator. So we know who our market is, who our targets are. There's a lot of them, and it's not just right now we're U.S. focused, but it's globally as well. You tell me where you want to go. I can talk about LinkedIn, how I use
Yeah, no,
that.
this is usually something I'm passionate about because I think people have multiple channels that they typically use when it comes to outreach. Some people prefer picking up the phone. Some people prefer to send out emails. Some people prefer to leverage LinkedIn outreach, and some people prefer a hybrid outreach approach compared to kind of combining everything together. So you let me know like what's working for you right now, what's not working for you right now, and then
Sure.
I'll kind of just continue the conversation.
Based on my background before there was an internet and all that kind of stuff, I used to cold call. I mean, you just know, you're just going to keep doing it, keep doing it. And I think I mentioned to you the way we found out it was a large company we were selling to. We would call up and order their annual report, which they would send us in the mail. And that's how we got background on the company. People today don't realize this
Wow.
information was fun. So I do have a cold calling background. I still do it. And what you just said before, the hybrid approach, I will tell you today. I have been cold calling or, calling. I have people that I call. And the thing you have to remember is, 8 to 10 times touches, to get to people. Don't call once, twice, or whatever and say, okay, forget it. They're not interested. I'm dealing with a very, very large forensic accounting firm, and I'll give you a little how I got here. LinkedIn, I have thousands and thousands of contacts over the years. I do use Sales Navigator. It's one of my favorite tools. One of the reasons is I can personalize it, and I personalize it. I don't do these mass, things,
Right.
automated things. I have in the past, but I prefer to do it. What I do is I have the contacts. I select, who I'm going to send to, small groups at a time. Come up with, a message, which I use AI for. I use AI for everything I do today and just change the name, hi so and so, hi so and so, and just maybe I send 20, 40 out a day or so, different groups and try it out. One of the first people that responded to me, I had a little pitch there for an offer, a deal. Was the head of global forensic accounting for a very large accounting firm, and he said, "I'm interested." So he put me in touch with one of his guys in Europe or in the UK, and we're trying to set up a demo. So this has been going for weeks and weeks. They were interested, and everybody's busy. These guys
Of course.
travel, they do this. So finally today, after many weeks, I would say, we set a date for not next week, but the week after next. So persistence. Then that's what I will tell young people: have patience, and it's about persistence.
I think the biggest thing in today's generation that I can speak from my current generation now is we've been like rewired our brains when it comes to social media. And a lot of people, it took me a while. Like I've been happily off of social media as much over the last few years, and it's completely changed my life. But a lot of people, when you're scrolling and you're constantly just, your brain is actually not actively operating. Like they've actually done studies where it shows your brain waves and brain activity. And when you're just doing that, it actually slows down almost entirely. And I think what that's resulted in for younger people is we now rely on instant gratification on everything that we do. So that's actually something that I know my parents' generation and the generations before that, they didn't really, they had to, that's one thing you guys definitely had over us. Like we have the technological advantages, but you guys definitely had the ability to, like push through and you didn't need instant results. You kind of knew how to hustle. So I think the biggest thing that's getting lost now is again with cold calling, like I for one can speak from the other side. I hated it. I despised it with a passion. I felt like anytime I was calling someone, I was on the other side of the phone being like, man, I would not pick up this phone call if I was the other guy picking up this call. And I felt like I was disrupting someone's day and I felt weird about it. But ultimately, it's a mental thing where you have to understand that, in the beginning stages of any business, the main thing is you just need to get in front of as many people as possible and understand that the worst that's going to happen is you just get told no, or you get hung up on, or maybe a little worse, but typically that's kind of where it caps off at. I wanted to ask you a more specific question, not necessarily about
Just like
outreach.
if
Sorry,
I
go
get
ahead.
yeah, one more thing. One thing that's important that gets lost today, and believe me, I got bombarded with phone calls, and I'll tell you what I get on LinkedIn and stuff like that. Relationships. It's not about hitting somebody and saying, "Buy this. I can help you. I can sell you this."
Yeah,
I get 100 LinkedIn messages a day. I can help you with AI. I can help you with your sales outreach. Same thing. I'm getting emails and stuff like that. I'm not going to respond. I'm going to throw out. So when I try to connect with somebody, even it's a cold call or if it's on Sales Navigator, I'm not pitching them right away. I'm establishing a relationship. I'm making contact, getting into discussion. Maybe what are you doing now? Stuff like that. Don't push. That drives me off the wall.
oh yeah, no, that's actually a very good game right there too, because I think a lot of people we're in an environment where, especially on LinkedIn and stuff like LinkedIn, you probably get I get barricaded, so especially with your type of following, I can imagine you probably get a ton of emails like that as well. Relationship building, personalization where possible, everything. You just need to try to set yourself up separately. On this topic, I do want to ask you though, a lot of people, if you look at marketing instructors and people that do master classes online when it comes to these types of topics, they focus on a concept called pattern interrupts. And a lot of people focus on, like I'm going to send a message to XYZ person. And the intro, I've seen some ridiculous introductions to messages, something that, and the show is pretty uncensored, but I've seen somebody say like in a subject line, like, hey, I've seen you in the Epstein files, just to get somebody to open up their message. And I'm curious to see, like, obviously there is a fine line when it comes to pattern interrupts, but what's your take on an actual effective use of a pattern interrupt?
What I do when I'm sending emails and things like that, cold emails and stuff, I'm using AI again. I tell it I'm very intimate with AI. It knows my business. It's like these are the people I'm targeting. This is what we do. And I have my spiel and I reload it every time. I've got a lot of messaging and stuff like that. And it tells me, what to say and, that kind of stuff, what to write. And I tune it and things like that. It's gotta be focused on the person that you're trying to whose attention you're trying to get, number 1. Number 2 is I try to offer something of value, you know,
Love it.
something that will help them, that will be of interest to them. It's not about me, it's about them. How can I help them?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like the best thing that actually changed the course of our business was, especially for email outreach. For example, if we're talking to SaaS clients or anybody in that space, don't just sell them previously early on, like a couple years ago, we would sell them, hey, we can help you get X amount of clients within X amount of period. But we realized that messaging was very saturated and they were getting the same messaging from everywhere. And now for a lot of our team, like they will reach out to not like 100 or 200 companies a day. It'll be like maybe 10 or 20. And those 10 or 20 companies, you do a little bit of research in advance and you offer them, say, like an audit of their infrastructure, like some type of free type of valuable ad that you can
Yeah.
actually give them. And response rates have grown. And I feel like naturally the business has grown in, as a result too. So completely agree with you when it comes to all those things. I am curious, Barbara, like I had one question written down that I really wanted to ask you because you mentioned how there's a lot of technical challenges in the banking space and how every bank has a different format for every statement, which makes it very difficult, I would imagine, as somebody that's not in the space to actually build a product like yours and test it out because there isn't consistency. How does that shape your product development phase? And what was the biggest challenge for you to overcome?
Yeah, see, what the advantage I had was, I've been in this business so long, and I wasn't just selling. I also, the software got so kludgy to use that I was selling a service. So I was using the software, for forensic accountants and stuff like that as a service. So, I knew the stuff, I knew the challenges and everything else. I would probably say I'm the foremost expert in bank statement formats in the country, if not the world. So that drove, and I designed the software, even though we had developers. When I started this thing, I said, I don't know anything about, programming languages or anything. Today, we have to hire people. So that's what I did. But the design was mine. And the direction and what we need to do to get it out, that was me. So it was built from the ground up to accommodate, this idiosyncrasy there. And the other thing is when I did first get involved in it was like a year ago, January, was when we started with Gen AI and I was the prompt engineer. I have been the prompt engineer all along. So I knew how to, direct it and what I needed to do and what it needed to do and stuff like that. And I will say that what I do now as a prompt engineer versus a year ago is so different. I am so dependent on the AI now. It's driving me. In the beginning, it was more like I was programming it and telling it what to do. Now, a year later, I can't. I just have to tell it what I need, make sure it's doing the right thing. Big change.
That's you actually hit the nail on the head. I feel like a lot of people, the way that we've actually started leveraging AI, especially after Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, a lot of these different models have slowly come out. I think everybody's understanding of how they're using it. And somebody like you, I think the reason you've been able to put your head into so many different spaces is because you were in the trenches. Like you actually were engineering the prompts, you were doing a lot of the product development, you've led a sales team. So I think for people that are actually watching this, if you're just a seller or you're just doing one side of the business, be curious. And I think curiosity of actually going into those different parts of the business are only beneficial, especially talking to somebody like you. That's one thing I've learned.
Yeah. Exactly. Another challenge we have too for this, which is two things that are, anti-AI. Number one is huge amounts of data. These people, a big case can have 40, 50 bank accounts, brokerage accounts, credit card statements, things like that. I've seen statements with this 300 plus transactions a month. And then remember, they're uploading 60 months worth. So we have huge amounts of data. AI is not built for that. Okay, so that was a problem. That's a huge challenge. And the other thing is AI is all this information, everything you want. Well, in this case, you got to do the same thing over and over exactly the same way every single time. So, that those are the challenges, for a technical standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, there's a huge market, obviously, based upon like how you guys have successfully grown. How long has eFraud services actually been around for?
We've actually been around for like 5 years. And like I said, for 5 years, I did other stuff, I was selling services and stuff like that because the, the software developers could not get it to work. Every time we hired somebody, I was like, yeah, we can do it. We can do it. And nobody would quit. It was like 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. Yeah. Give me more time. Or here's, 77% of this, statement, fails, has errors. That's the best we can do.
Yeah,
That's the kind of stuff that we got to. It was just a long journey, and it was all the technology. And even once I got the AI working, then I started looking at what else was going on because things were still crashing because we get these big files and lots of data. And it turned out that I wound up rewriting most of it, I would say, through now using AI. I still don't know these languages. I've learned a lot more, and then that's what I do. We work hand in here, and that's my part.
no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I wanna shift gears a little bit too into just like a future focus. As somebody that's been in this space, IT, tech, whatever we want to call it, but you've been here for originally when none of this tech was around. You've obviously seen the dot-com boom, you've seen the AI boom. Would you say the AI space and window that we're in right now is the biggest opportunity when it comes to businesses compared to anything you've seen before?
Absolutely. And the speed of it, you look at .com versus this, and it's daily. Yeah, things are happening, things are moving, it's like, okay, that's better than it was yesterday.
Yeah,
That's what's happening. I mean, that's the scary part. From a business standpoint, are you always going to be behind? How do you keep up with it? Can you? But I think, the smart people are how I leverage it, and then now and going forward, being able to envision how is it going to help me later.
for sure. For sure. I think personally speaking, there's nothing in my life right now that I'm not leveraging AI to do, whether that's creating copy for an email, whether that's just workflows internally. We've completely automated like emails that are managed. I don't have like people because I previously had to have like 5 or 10 people on our team just sending emails out every day. And I was like, we need to find better usage of your time instead of just sitting there all day doing that. So now just people just hop on a sales calls and you just have the AI taking care of the rest of it. So it's cool to see how it's constantly evolved. And now a new evolution that we're actually working with one of our partners recently is analyzing sales teams. So a lot of sales teams, they'll hop on calls, and I'm sure you've heard of all these transcription tools. Like you have all the things that are recording all these. Yeah. So like they'll summarize your meetings, they'll give you the transcription. But the problem that I always felt was they were good at capturing the notes so you can pay attention on a call, but they weren't good at actually continuing the conversation forward in terms of how you can build the next step and kind of analyze your sales teams. So a lot of companies now, like I feel like I've actually noticed lead generation hasn't been the biggest concern for them. The biggest concern has been converting leads once they're through the door on their sales team sides, depending on the product. And one thing that AI is now doing is that not only does it transcribe your calls, but it actually is listening to patterns that are happening in those calls. So whether those are pain points, objections, like how your team is objection handling those objections, and you get summaries and reports, kind of graded reports of every single call you have. So as a sales manager or an executive, you look at these and you're like, okay, this is where my team is struggling, and these are the things that we need to improve on. So I'm curious if you've heard of stuff like that and how you guys are doing it.
Yeah, one thing in our target markets, our prospects, they're not very sophisticated technology people. So,
Mm,
they're not high tech. They're not using these tools and stuff like that. So it's a lower level of call. But you triggered something. One of the developers that we use, one of our original guys who said they could do this, machine learning, they had developed call center software for analyzing, who's doing well, what works, what doesn't well, exactly what you're talking about. And you take that and now you just, throw AI at it. You don't have to do anything. It just does it automatically. I mean, huge shifts like that. Yeah. You're displacing a lot of stuff that used to take a lot of time and a lot of money.
it's an exciting time for somebody like us, like where especially people that are early on in their career, we're coming into an opportunity where it will be very competitive, but there is opportunity for everyone, despite what your technical expertise may be. It's bridged the skill gap between people who may have studied this for 5 or 10 years to somebody that maybe just wants to learn the tools that are already out there. It's definitely done that. I'm
And
really
the
curious.
other thing
Yeah.
I will admit, my whole life I've been a note taker. I'm still a note taker. I'm waiting for you cleaning up the tape from.
I still have my sticky notes right here. So you'll see me throughout every single call.
So it's still, so when I'm talking to somebody, on the phone or, on a call like this, I still do take a lot of notes. And even though I've got the summaries and they're great because, you forget half of what was talked about and gives you the to-dos and everything. I still have my notes where the important, points I've got highlighted.
No, 100%. And I think it's a compound thing. So as long as you have your tools and you still have your own personal, because at the end of the day, we all know the best way that we work. We're not just going to depend on a tool. I have countless amounts of notes, my papers, everything here. Even though it's an old school thing to say, I'm pretty sure even the younger generation can agree with that point. Yeah, paper and pen is undefeated. I have two more questions for you, Barbara, before we get into the final segment of our show. Just from a business perspective, you as a leader over at eFraud, what is your roadmap now when it comes to AI? Of course, the next 5, 10 years, I'm sure you also know that things will continue to evolve very rapidly. But where would you like to be, say, like 6 to 12 months from now when it comes to your operations specifically? And then a second question would be, as somebody who has obviously seen the entire evolution of the industry, what is one recurring challenge in the space that you're in right now? So financial investigations today that is recurring, and how would you try to address that?
In terms of growth a year from now, I'd like to see us certainly, saturate or, be across the US. Global is in our future a few years. And we'll have more applications and things, and more features and stuff for our products. This is something that always could be enhanced. And by accident, we now have a product that converts any financial document in PDF to an Excel workbook with nice little worksheets for analysis. So if you have a document with a lot of tables in it, because we never know what's in these documents, it's like the bank statements, the customer uploads it. And the same thing with the financial document. It could be a big brokerage statement. It might have 20 tables in it. They're all different formats and stuff. So our tool extracts from anything, general ledger, payroll, things like that, and it puts it in each table goes into a nicely formatted worksheet for analysis. So, even though there's all these tools and stuff to do it, you usually get garbage, when you get Excel. So things like that are going to continue to evolve. And then where do they come from? They come from our customers. Customer says, hey, we have this need. Can you do that? So financial fraud is obviously growing very rapidly,
Yeah.
touching everybody and everything, from the elderly to everybody, kids, businesses. It's just amazing. And people, I think, are just getting more brazen. It's like every day I'm reading about, local people, they embezzled, $100 million here, or they stole, $200,000, from an elderly person. It's just growing. And especially now with all the technology and the AI and everything else, it's just going to get worse and worse. And it's not just small people, it's foreign actors and stuff. I've seen cases over the years that you don't believe what people do. They raise money. We had one case, they raised $80 million for a tech project. Never spent a penny of it on the business that they had, apartments and this and that and the other thing. And then these weren't, crooks or anything. I mean, one guy was an attorney, the other guy was a businessman.
Wow.
It's amazing what you see and people, do. And again, with the technology and being able to hide now and stuff like that, you're only going to see more and more.
No, that's
So, we won't have to worry about what we're doing 10 years from now.
that's
I
that's
won't be
actually
hearing it.
that's cool because I think on the other side of it, I'm seeing it just from obviously with the state of the world and like the economy right now. I think even for younger adults, I can say that it's harder to afford the things that our parents were able to afford. And I feel like with that comes, I guess the best way to put it is the likelihood of things like this happening from even the younger crowd, it has increased tenfold compared to what it once was previously. So it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, like it's a reality of what's going on in the world right now. And it's cool to see how you guys are addressing that with your product and what's coming out on the market.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad when I was, 30 years old. I think I owned a townhouse. You can't do that today.
Yeah.
It's so different. And I feel bad for people today.
I think the average age now for a first time like I'm based in Toronto, so just as in Canada, I'm assuming it's still relatively similar to places in the East Coast in the States as well. But the first time home buyer, the average age in Canada now is about 36.
I'm sure it's older than that in the US. I
Really?
would bet that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so for a lot of people that are still in their mid to late 20s, it's a reality. Like they're staying with their parents a lot longer, and it's just the state of the world. But I think we could talk about this for a lot longer. I think we'll have another whole episode for that. But I really want to get into the final stage of today's episode, Barbara, which is gonna be a little fun. We'll have a couple of rapid fire questions for you, and they'll be really straightforward, but really just let me know. You don't have to think about it, no wrong answers, but the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear any of these. So we'll start off with one AI tool that you use regularly every single day that you couldn't live without.
Claude. Claude is my best friend.
Is probably anybody in development is nodding in agreement with you right now. What is one product?
We do use Gemini for our engine. One of the reasons is because of the PDFs.
Mm.
Yeah, Gemini, Claude doesn't do a good job of that. Gemini does. The reason I was actually using Claude originally, it started with Claude, and we switched to Gemini because of the context window. At that time, it was too small. Now Claude's catching up, so we're kind of looking at should we go back, but that's where we're at. But as far as development, Claude, not only business, personal, everything I do is with Claude.
What is one productivity habit that's helped you throughout your career?
Ugh. I like to finish things. I'm very diligent about getting stuff done. I think it goes back to when I was a little kid. I never finished anything. At some point in my life, it became very important, to complete things. Like now, I may stay up until, 11, 12 o'clock at night, just to get something done. It's important for me to finish things, not leave things hanging.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you're, we have like 20 million tasks every single day to do, and it's very easy to completely just get lost in like whatever tasks there are. So, organization is definitely something. Even as I've continued, that I know is one area that I will continue to evolve in as well.
I have multiple to-do lists every day. They get
Yeah,
reprioritized every day, constant.
constantly. Next question for you would be: what's one thing that entrepreneurs often underestimate when you're building a more technical product like yours?
I've certainly grossly underestimated the technology itself. Especially if you're not very technical. And again, I was to a certain degree, but I said, okay, I don't know the details of this, so I will leave it to others. I really didn't realize the complexity of, especially, when you're online and, there's messaging and multiple users and stuff like that. These aren't the systems that I built a long time ago. So it's very different. What scared me though was that people who built these things for us originally, and we could have hundreds of users uploading, hundreds of bank statements at the same time. They had one funnel. So it's like if everybody went through one funnel, they get the results 3 days later. We're telling them they're having it in minutes, stuff like that. So, what was your question again? I'm sorry. Yeah, make sure if you don't understand the technology, make sure you have somebody else who understands it and what's involved. Like in AWS, we probably use 30 tools now in AWS. It's so complex compared to what it was. When I started, you had the programming language and you had the system. That
Yeah.
was it. You didn't have to know anything else.
It's crazy talking to you how you've seen how everything has changed. It gives us younger guys as well perspective on like the IT space that we're walking into now. And I cannot even imagine like it was funny because the other day my niece actually came up to me. She's like 7 years old and she taught me something new that she could do on her iPad, which I didn't even know. Was like I was like, wow, it's just constantly just we feel like we're young, but it's constantly evolving in front of us
Yeah, well, which brings up a good point, and that's keep learning. Yeah, and that's something I've always
consistently.
done, which is the only reason I'm here today.
Last two questions for you. So, if you could wave a magic wand right now, you woke up and you were Harry Potter and you could fix one recurring challenge in your business today, what would that be?
Probably funding. The more funding, the faster we're going to grow. The more resources we have to do the things that we want to do. The two things I would say that have been the big challenges for us were technology and funding.
GM funding. And then the last question I have for you is if you yourself, Barbara, were not working in technology, fraud analysis, you've retired, what do you think you would be doing today instead?
I would be doing something. I would not be sitting around. And then I love to go and sit at the pool, and then do stuff like that. I
Yeah,
would do that. I do my water aerobics that I can't do now because it's not timely. But like I'm involved in the temple, I'm the vice president of fundraising, and then some other stuff. So I would be involved in something, helping, even if I wasn't getting paid for it, I'd probably volunteer, maybe mentoring people or things like that. I would always be doing stuff and reaching out and helping people.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Honestly, Barbara, thank you so much. Like, I think this conversation today enlightens us as a younger crowd, and I'm sure also other business leaders that will get access to this will also be able to share their insights. But I definitely want to thank you for taking the time to sit down here today and sharing your insights with us. To wrap us up, you just want to let everybody know where's the best place for people to follow your work if you're on social media and also just learn more about your company as well.
Sure. I never know my social media handle, but first of all, you can call me if you want to just talk about this stuff. Yeah. My number is 239-842-8224. Our website is efraudservices.com, mostly on LinkedIn, and that is look up Barbara Steinberg or Barbara L. Steinberg and eFraud Services on LinkedIn. Those are the primary places. And
Awesome.
again, I am happy to talk to anybody anytime. But sure, thank you very much for the opportunity. I enjoyed it very much. And hopefully I gave some insight to some people of your generation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much again, Barbara, for your time and hope to have you on again in the future.
Look forward to it.
We'll stop the recording.